Hello everybody and welcome back to the second part of our character setup videos for Unreal Engine 4. In our previous video we got the basics done and we have the character in our map. We can walk around, he's using our run animation, but we can't use our walking or our sprinting yet. We don't have a jump animation and you can see there's a little bit of hiccups if we switch from left to right, walking backwards fast, and if we switch directions fast. So we're going to fix a few things and add some new things as well. So let's start. First, to fix the hiccups, that's pretty simple. We're going to go to our blend space and we're going to open it. If we look at the asset details on the left and scroll down, we got this setting here called target weight interpolation, and we're just going to set this to 1, save it, and that's going to blend the animations a bit smoother. So if we play right now, you can see there's no hiccups anymore if I switch walking left to right, and everything just blends a bit smoother. If you reduce this value to something really low, like 0.1, you can see it's really heavy to switch between animations and it takes a long time to start up the animation, I guess. So you can play around with the value and it's not something that's set in stone, but something like 1 should do for now. So here we go. So that fixed our little hiccup. Now we're going to add our jumping animations first. And we're going to add those in the animation blueprint as well. So let's open the animation blueprint and let's go to our anim graph. This is the blend space, the blueprint, and we're going to the anim graph. So first thing we're going to do is disconnect this. Hold Alt and click on the pin to disconnect it. And we're going to drag off this and we're going to say save new cast pose. So just type save and here it pops up, new save cast pose. Select that node and give it a name. Call it something like base locomotion. And what this does, it stores it so we can use it in another state machine or somewhere else, and we can continue on from here basically. So we're going to create a new state machine, right click and type state machine, add new state machine, and we're going to call this jump locomotion. Just like so. Let's open this and we're going to add a few new states in here. So drag off the entry node, add state, and the first one is going to be base locomotion. From the base locomotion, drag off, create another state and call this one jumps. From the jumps again, drag off, create a new state, and let's call this one jump land. And now from the jump land, we're going to go and drag back to the base locomotion, and we're going to do this twice. So we have 2 transition rules over here, and it looks like this. Let's set the transition rules first. First do the base locomotion to jumps, so double click this one. And we're simply going to say, let me check, base locomotion if we are in the air. So we're going to drag in is-in-air boolean and drop it onto the pin. And that's our first transition rule. Go back. Now next, for the jumps to jump land, let's open this transition rule. And we're going to say if we are not in the air. So we're going to say control, drag in is-in-air, drag off that and type not boolean, and connect it up like this. Let's go back to our last transition rules, which are these 2. For the first one, we're going to open it and we're just going to drag off the is-in-air and drop it onto the transition rule like that. Then go back to this screen and just select the other transition rule, don't open it, and on the asset panel, the details panel, sorry, you'll see this flag called automatic rule based on sequence player in state, and you're just going to enable that one, which means the engine basically comes up with its own transition rule based on what's already here. So that should do it for that. Now we're going to open our base locomotion, double click it, and we're going to right click here and we're going to say use cached pose, and that gives us the use cached pose base locomotion, and that's what we just created. So we're going to continue from that, click it, and just plug it directly into the final animation pose, and that's our first one. Let's go back to this, and we're going to do our jump land first. So open our jump land, and again we're going to go from our cast pose, so use cast pose, and select the base locomotion one, but this time we're going to apply additive. So search for apply, search for additive, apply additive. I misspelled that probably, so apply additive, and just plug it into the final animation pose. And for the additive animation, we're going to look for the jump animations, and we're going to plug in the recovery additive animation. So just drag it onto here, plug in the pin, and we're going to lower the alpha so it blends with the other animations. Let's say 0.5 to start with, and we're always able to adjust that if we want to. Let me see if we have to do anything else in here. No, that should be good. So let's go back, and now we're going to create our jumps. So let's open this one, and for this one we're going to create another state machine. So right click here and type state machine, add new state machine, and let's call this one jumping. Plug it into the final animation pose, and let's open our new state machine. Inside here we're going to create new states, so drag off the entry, click add state, and the first one is going to be jump start. Let's create another state, and let's call this one jump apex. And for the last one, drag off the jump apex, create a new state, and let's call this jump pre-land. Just like this. Now we're not going to fill in any transition rules here, but we're going to set both of them to the automatic rule based on transition thingy. So enable this one for both of them, just like so. And now we're going to fill in the animations for them. So let's go to the jump start, and let's look for our jump start animation. Just drag it in like this and connect our pin. Make sure it's not looping, and that should be good to go. Go back, and we're going to do the jump apex one. So open that one, look for your jump apex, drag it in, connect it up, and again make sure it's not looping. And last but not least, the jump pre-land. Just open that one, look for your jump land, drag it in, connect up the pin, and make sure it's not looping. So that should do it for our jumps state machine, and that should also fix our jump animations, I guess. So let's test this. Let's go back to our animation graph and make sure we plug in the state machine into our final pose so everything actually happens. And now just compile this and let's play it, and if we jump, you can see it's playing our jump animation. Also, if we're falling off a cliff or something, we get the jump animation, so that's nice. It's a little bit not really smooth, and you can play around with it by adjusting some play rates or blends. for example. So if you go into your jump locomotion and to the jumps, jumping, our jump start animation, just expose the play rate as a pin, for example, and we're going to set it to something like 0.7. Jump pre-land, let's make that slower as well, so play rate, and put this real slow, like something like 0.2. And that makes our animation look a bit better. It's a bit smoother, it's not as clunky. So yeah, that looks pretty decent for now, I guess. And we can jump around. Let me see what we can do next. Let me scroll down in my notes a little bit. So we did the jumping, we did the jump locomotions. Yeah, let's go and do our aiming walk speed and our sprinting walk speeds. Now, because we're using a blend space for our animations for running, walking, and sprinting, we don't really need to do anything in our animation blueprint. We just need to set the maximum walk speed for our character, and we will automatically play the correct animations. So let's just close down our animation blueprint, and we're going to do some work in our character blueprint. But first we need to set up the keybinds, and we're going to do that in the project settings. So go to Edit, Project Settings. It opens off screen. Here we are. In the project settings under the engine, you look for input. And you can set your action mappings over here. So let's open this. I already added them when I made this previously, so let me delete those. This is what it probably looks like for you, so we're going to add a new keybind. Click the little plus sign over here and let's rename this to aim. And you can fill in the key you want to use or the button for the gamepad or your mouse or something like that. I'm going to use right mouse button like this. And let's also add an action mapping for our sprinting. So again, click the little plus sign over here and rename this to sprint. And for the sprinting, I'm going to use the shift button. I'm going to use left shift. You can add multiple buttons as well if you like. Just click the little plus sign over here. And again, look for shift, for example. And you can add right shift as well, or whatever you like. So these are our two new keybinds. That's fine. Let's close this down. And now we're going to go and add some stuff into the base character. As I mentioned before, all of our children will automatically inherit everything we put in our base character. So adding this, changing this one will simply do. Let's open this and let's find an empty spot to start with. Just like this. Right click in an empty place and we're going to look for one of our new keybinds. So type event aim. We're going to start off with aiming, and here you see your action event aim. Click that, and this is what happens when you press the aim button we just assigned in the inputs menu. So for pressed, we're going to go and set a new variable, and we're going to change the maximum walk speed of our character. So let's create variables first. Click the little plus sign over here, and we're going to call the first one is aiming. No, is aiming, like that. It's a boolean, so that's fine. We just want to know if we're aiming or not. And we're also going to go and add the is sprinting. So we got both of them set up and ready to go. And it's also going to be a boolean, so that's fine. Okay, if we press our sprint button, we want to set is aiming, so hold Alt and drag in is aiming. Connect up the execution pin and set it to true. Copy this and paste it, and connect it to the released one and set it to false. So if we release our aim button, it's going to set it back to false. And now we just need to change our move speeds, and we can do that from the character movement component over here. So we drag in the character movement component to get a reference to it, drag off it and say set max walk speed. And right now you can just enter the new walk speed in here. So connect it up like this. We're going to set a walk speed of 275, and that should work. Copy this and paste it, and connect the execution pin for the false as well. And we're whoopsie, and we're going to set it back to the default value of 600, just like that. So that should work, and we're going to test this. So compile and play. And now normally I'm running around and everything looks fine, and if I hold down my right mouse button, you can see I'm slowing down and I'm playing my walk-in animation. So it looks like everything is working the way we want it. We can still jump, so that's cool, but something is wrong. If we want to use this in a multiplayer project, you're going to end up with a few issues, and let me show that. We're going to use a two-player setup. Let's play this. Let me resize the screens for you. Just a second. Just like this. So the left screen is our server, and if we're playing on a server, you can see everything is still working. We can run around. If we hold down our right mouse button, we go walking, and if we look at the screen of the client, we can also see our animation change in that viewport. So we can tell the character is walking or running, and the speed of the character is actually changing. But if we switch to our client, and we're going to try and do the same thing, we can run obviously, but if we hold down our right mouse button, nothing really happens on the server screen. He just keeps playing the running animation, and if I look at my own screen, my animation is a bit hiccupy, it's jerky, it's not as smooth, so something obviously is not working like it should. And that's because we're not replicating anything, and the server doesn't know what we're doing. I would like to try and explain replication, but we're probably going to end up in a messy situation if I do so. So you're better off just Googling it or looking at other YouTube videos to get some extra information on the subject. But it comes down to the fact that the information the server has will always considered to be correct. So if we're a client and we're trying to change a variable and we're not telling the server about it, the server will reset it, basically. So what we need to do is make sure we tell the server what we are doing, so the server can make the changes as well. And everything between the server version of the game and the local version of the game matches up. How are we going to do that? Well, first of all, let's disconnect this stuff and let's move this to the side, like so. And we're going to use custom events to make sure everything replicates. So we're going to need to create a new event. Right click and type custom event, add new custom event, and let's call this event start aim, just like that. Now we're going to create another custom event, add custom event, and we're going to call this server start aim. Just like that. Now for the server start aim, you want to make sure it replicates and it runs on server right here in the details panel, and you click the reliable flag to make sure it won't get dropped. So it's almost certain to make it to the server in a multiplayer game, and it's considered important information basically. Now if you look at this executes on the server only, so we can use it to tell the server what we are doing. If we go from the start aim, we're going to drag off and we want to know if we are the server or not. We can use the has authority node for that. Switch has authority. Select that one and it returns this node. If we are authority, which basically means if we are the server, we're going to continue from the authority pin, and if we are a client, we're going to continue from the remote pin. So we can use that. If we are a client, we're going to call server start aim, like so. And if we are the server, or if we have authority, we're simply going to make the changes we need to. So let's drag over this part, which is enable aiming and reducing our walk speed. So if we are the server, let's connect it up like this. And from our client, we're going to change them as well after we told the server what we are doing. From the server start aim, you want to call the normal start aim event. So start aim, and that should be our setup. Now what happens if I'm the server and I'm pressing my button? We're going to call the start aim event from here, like so. So I come into the start aim event, switch has authority, I'm the server, I have authority, so I'm simply going to change my aiming and set my walk speed, and that should do fine. If I'm a client and I press the button, I come into the start aim event, I switch authority, but I'm not authority, so I go to the remote pin. I call the server start aim event, and that's a reliable replicated to server if I'm the owning client, in which case I am. So this is going to call the server start aim event, which executes on the server. This will call the start aim event. The server will come in here and has authority, and it will change the variables for the client, and the client changes it locally as well. So that's basically what happens. I hope it kind of makes sense the way I'm explaining it, but this is the basic setup for replicating events. So this should work in multiplayer. We're going to go and do the same for stop aiming. So we're going to create new custom event, add custom event, and call this stop aim. And we're going to create a second custom event, and we're going to call it server stop aim, like so. The server stop aim is going to be replicated to run on server. It's a reliable event, so we click reliable, and from our server stop aim we're going to call the normal stop aim event, like so. Again, the normal stop aim, we're going to check if we are the server or not, so has authority, like this. If we have authority, we're simply going to change the variables, and if we don't have authority, we're going to let the server know what we are doing, so server stop aim. And after that, set the variables locally as well, so connect them up, like so. Make sure at release you actually call your stop aim event, stop aim, like so. And now we should have a working aiming, or actually walk speed setup for multiplayer. So compile this, play this, and I have to resize it again. That's great. Oh, what's the wrong screen. Like so. So the server already worked, but let's check if it still does. So I can run around, and if I hold down my right mouse button, I'm going to my walk speed, and you can see on both screens my animations and speed are changing. So that's still working. That's great. Now let's switch to our client. We can run around, and if we press our right mouse button, we actually go to walking on both screens like it should, and it's not being a hiccupy animation. It's playing nice and smooth, and everything is working. So right now we are replicating this to the server the way we should, and our walking and our running is working. Awesome. Let's save everything. Why not? Here we go. Let's see what we can do next. Let's do the sprinting next. So that's basically the same as what we did for aiming, but instead of reducing our walk speed, we're going to increase it. So first put a comment around our aiming, select everything, press C, and say aim events, like so. Now let's do sprinting. So First, we're going to look for our action event again. So event sprint. That's what happens when we press our sprint button on our keyboard or gamepad or whatever you assigned. And we're going to need our custom events again to make sure everything replicates. So we're going to start, create a custom event, add custom event and call this start sprint. And create a second custom event, add custom event server start sprint. The server start sprint will replicate to run on server and be reliable. Server start sprint will call the normal start sprint event, like so. And in the normal start sprint, we want to check if we are the server or not. So switch has authority. If we don't have authority, we're going to let the server know what we're doing. So we're going to call server start sprint. And then we're going to set our variables. So let's drag off the is sprinting. While holding Alt, we get a setter. Connect them up and set sprinting to true. And let's set our maximum move speed again. So get the character movement component, drag off it, set max walk speed. And we want our sprinting speed to be 900. So say 900 and just connect them up. Just like that. For our pressed event, let's call the start sprint. And that should do it for start sprint. So let's do our stop sprint in the same way. Create two custom events. Stop sprint. And the second custom event, server stop sprint. Like that. Again, the server one is going to be replicated to run on server and a reliable event. This one is going to call our stop sprint event. Oops, stop sprint. And in the stop sprint, we're going to check if we have authority, has authority. And again, if we don't have authority, let the server know what we're doing. So stop sprinting. Like so. And now we're going to set our variables back to the normal variables, which is not sprinting, and 600 default move speeds, like so, and connect them up. And that should work as well. Let's add the stop sprint to our released event, like so. And now we should be able to sprint if we press our sprint button. So compile this and let's play it. And let's reduce this again. Like so. First the server. I'm running around and I'm holding shift right now, and you can see I'm switching to a sprint animation and I'm moving faster, obviously. So that's working, and it's also replicating to our client. He can tell I am sprinting and my animation changes on his screen as well. So that's good. We're going to switch to our client now and check if it's working. We are running, holding shift, and now we are sprinting. And we can see the animation change on both screens, so that looks fine. Cool. Okay, that's nice. We got both sprinting and aiming set up. Let's comment this and call this sprint events, like so. Now there is something we're going to need to look into. Let's switch back to one player to make it a bit easier and compile this. Right now we have two functions that both change our walk speeds. So if I run around and I hold shift, I start sprinting. And right now I'm also clicking my right mouse button, so I go back to walking. That's fine. But if I release my shift after I pressed my right mouse button, it will go back to our default speed. So if I release shift now, I still got my right mouse button pressed, but I'm going back to my walk speed. That's because my stop sprint event is overriding my walk speed because it's not checking if I'm aiming. So let's make sure both of these events don't mess with each other. And let's add a check at the end. Let's go to our stop aim event. And we're going to disconnect the setters. So hold Alt and click and move this over a little bit. Now if you hold down B on your keyboard and you click, you get a branch. Let's add a branch in between this, connect up the execution pin, connect the false to the set move speed. And we want to know if we are sprinting or not, so we drag on our isSprinting boolean. So now if we are releasing our aim button, we check if we are sprinting. If we are not sprinting, we're resetting our move speed back to default. If we are sprinting, we're not doing anything because the other function will take care of it. And we're going to do the same over here. So expand this a little bit, disconnect these two and move them over. Hold B and click to create a branch. Connect them up, connect the false to the setter. And for this one, we want to know if we are aiming or not. Just like this. Now that should work, so compile and check it out. I'm running. I'm holding my right mouse button, so I'm walking right now. I keep my right mouse button pressed and I press my shift as well. I go sprinting, so that's fine. I'm releasing my right mouse button right now, and I'm still sprinting, so that's cool. It's working. And right now I can click my right mouse again, and I'm going back to walking, and release shift afterwards, and I'm still walking. So that's good. We got that out of the way, and it's working. Compile and save this, and let me scroll down to my notes, and let me see. We are going to do, we did the aim events, the custom events. Let's add an InfoStructure and a data table right now. We started adding some variables in here, like our aim walk speed, our sprint walk speed, and things like that. And we might want to be able to have a nice overview and have a nice setup to adjust things easily and have different versions of a character. So I'm going to show you how I do that. We're going to close this. And we're just going to create a new InfoStructure in the characters folder. So characters folder, right click and go to blueprints. And at the bottom you see structure. Just click that one and give it a name. So let's call this character info underscore structure. Oh, if I spell that right, structure, just like so. And we're also going to create a data table. Excuse me. So right click again, and we're going to go to miscellaneous, and here you see data table. Select that one, and it's going to ask you to pick a structure. We just created one, so that's nice. We're going to fill that one in, our character info structure, and press OK. And let's name this character info table. Just like that. Now the info structure will tell the data table what variables it needs to store, basically. So we're going to start off in our info structure and open it. Let's double click it. And you get something like this. The first variable is already here, so we simply need to change it. We're going to call this mesh. And we want it to be a reference to our skeletal mesh, so look for skeletal mesh. Here you see skeletal mesh object reference. Click that one, and you see it pop up in the list down here in the default values. That's the first variable. The second one we're going to create, click new variable, select this, and we're going to call this one stamina reduction rate. Excuse me. And this one is going to be a float, like so. And the next variable we're going to add is going to be stamina regen rate. It's also a float, so that's fine. And we're also going to add 3 new variables for the walk speeds we have. So add new variable, aim walk speed. That's a float, so that's fine. New variable, run walk speed. And the last variable, sprint walk speed. Like so. All of these are floats, so that's good. And down here we can set default values for some of them if we like. So let's just make those 275 for aiming speed, 600 run speed, 900 sprint speed, and let's fill something like 005 and 002 in here. We probably need to adjust those later on, but now we have something in there. Save this and let's close down our infrastructure for now. We can expand this indefinitely basically and make everything variable if you like. You can take it pretty far, but we're going to start off simple, so let's keep it like this and go to our data table right now and open this up. Now you can see everything you put in your structure is now also in your data table, and you're able to populate it. Just on the left side here, click the little plus sign and it's going to add a row. Select a new row and you're going to rename it. This is the reference to the row, so make it something that makes sense. I'm going to call it Murdoch normal, so it's the normal Murdoch version. And we're going to tell what mesh belongs to it. So let's select the normal Murdoch, and we're going to leave this one, so that's fine. Let's create another one just for funsies. Let's call this one Murdoch. Oh, Murdoch Merc, for example. And you can assign a different mesh if you like. So let's select the Murdoch Merc one. And we can adjust some settings basically. So probably we could make him be able to sprint longer. So make his reduction rate a little bit lower and sprint faster maybe, so he has 1000 sprint speed instead of 900. And you can make different versions of a character like that. So we're going to save this right now and close it down. Now how are we going to use this? That's really not too hard. Let me scroll down to my list a little bit, my notes. So here we are. And character info table, and we did that. And now we are going back to our character blueprints and we're going to make sure everything works. So let's go back to the character base blueprint, and not the Murdoch child, but just the template blueprint, and we're going to open it. Let me see, we're going to add a few variables. So the variables we put into our data table, we also want to put them into our characters, so we don't have to reference to the data table every time we need to know something. We're just going to store them in the character as well at the start of the game. And how are we going to do that? Well, first we need to create them. So let's create a new variable and let's call this one stamina reduction rate. Stamina reduction rate. This is a float. We also need our stamina regen rate, so select it, Ctrl W, and stamina regen rate. It's also a float, so that's also fine. Then we need our 3 walk speeds, so Ctrl W and call this one aim walk speed. Duplicate it again and call this one run walk speed. And for the last one, duplicate it and call it sprint walk speed, just like that. Now we also going to add two other variables. So add a new one and call this stamina. And we're also going to add a new one, and that's going to be character row name. So character row name. And the last one, the character row name, we're going to change from a float into a name. So select name from the drop-down list. Those should be all the variables we need. So let's scroll down a little bit. Now we're going to compile the blueprint and we're going to set the default value for stamina to 1. Just like that. And now we want to make sure everything is applied to this. So we're going to look for the event play. Go to event begin play. And we're gonna drag off this and we're gonna say, let me check over here. So drag off this and say get a row, and you're going to get data table row. Select that node. Over here you can select the data table you want to use, so click it and we select our character info data table. And then we're going to plug in our character row name into the row name, like so. So we're going to drive it with a variable. Now from the out row, which is the result, we're going to drag off, and over here you see break character info structure. So select that one, and that gives us all the information that's in our info structure or our data table. So we're going to use that to set up our character. First we're going to set the mesh. So we're going to drag off this and we're going to say set skeletal mesh, like so. And we're going to plug in the new mesh right here, and this mesh reference is the mesh from the character. So if you right click and you say set skeletal mesh, right here it says you target the mesh, so you don't have to do it manually. It does it automatically for you. So that's the first one. We're going to set the correct mesh. Then we want to store everything in our other variables, so just hold Alt and drag them in to get setters, reduction rate, regeneration rate, aim walk speed, run walk speed, and our sprint walk speed. And we're just going to plug them in, so the reduction rate, the regen rate, the aim walk speed, the run walk speed, and also our sprint walk speed. Let's tidy this up a little bit, like so, and connect the execution pins, like so, and that should do it. So let's put a comment around this. Let's get this out of the way, like so. Comment event begin play. I can't type anymore. Event begin play, just like so. And now we need to make a small change to our child blueprint. So let's save and compile this one, and let's close it down. Let me scroll down in my list a little bit. And now here, where were we? Over here. Let's open our child blueprint. We want to delete the mesh probably, so let's just select the mesh and reset to default, which is none. So the mesh is gone. And now we're going to go to our event begin play over here. No, we're going to go to the construction script, I'm sorry. So go to construction script, and right here after the parent construction script, you're going to drag off this and you're going to say set character row name, which is the variable we put in our parent blueprint, but because we are a child we can access it. So we're going to set the character row name on construction, and we just type the character we want. So let's say Murdoch underscore normal. And now all of the specific values you set in the data table will be transferred to this character, and you don't have to do anything except change them in the data table if you want to. So you can easily make another duplicate of Murdoch, for example. Control duplicate it, call it character underscore Murdoch underscore Merc. We just open this, go to the construction script, change the name Murdoch Merc, and compile this. Now the Murdoch Merc refers to the second line in this, so it will set a different mesh, it will set different variables, and we have a different character basically. So we can play as normal Murdoch, just like this. And if we change the default pawn, for example, so go to the maps and modes, the game mode, and select Murdoch Merc. Now you see we have our different character with a different mesh, and it has slightly different values, so he can sprint a bit faster and he can sprint a bit longer, or whatever you want to change, so you can make different versions. So that's that basically. Let me put this back to the normal Murdoch. Maps and modes, Murdoch. And we're back to where we were. Let's save this. Here we go. Let me see, do we want to do anything else in this video? I think we're going to cut it off right here, and we're going to continue in the next video. And we're going to go and do some aim offsets and add our stamina and add a little HUD so we can see our stamina actually works. And we'll see what we can do else in that video as well. Okay, thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and talk to you next time. Later.